Good afternoon, friends and enemies. We are deep into the playoffs now. Week 15 of fantasy football is here. We are talking about the waiver wire, right? If you're watching this video, you've made it to the fantasy football playoff. We've got time, we've got effort that we still need to put in, all right? I apologize for this video coming out a little bit late today. I quite literally just got off of a plane. I was in Dallas last night for the Monday Night Football game. Let me tell you something, Jerry World, holy fuck. Say that guy is crazy, say whatever you want about him, but that man has some vision, and he put together a stadium that I can't imagine there's a nicer one out there. So I just landed, just got into the office filming this right now, but don't worry, I'm up to speed. I know what is going on in the fantasy football world. So we are here to talk about the trending up, the trending down, and everything in between for fantasy football this week. In particular, biggest storylines, running back position. This is a great week to need running backs. This is a great week to have fab left. I don't even know if great's the right word, actually. I'll stick to exciting. This is an intriguing or an exciting week to need running backs right now from the waiver wire, all right? And we'll talk about them in order. We have Patrick Taylor, who is now next in line up to be the San Francisco starting running back, depending on whether or not Isaac Guerendo plays. He is dealing with a mid-foot sprain. Bad news here. The good news was if you picked Guerendo up last week, he probably got you the win because he had multiple touchdown scores. Bad news is he hurt the foot, and now they play on Thursday night football. So he has about a 3-day turnaround. Now, honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if he played. Wouldn't be surprised if he didn't play. I think this is a true 50-50 scenario here. That being said, it's a good matchup against the Rams. We saw how effective Guerendo was in his role last week. So Taylor is a bigger back. Taylor is well-sized. I think he can do a lot of the things that Shanahan would ask a running back to do in this offense. My concern would be, I didn't even know Keyshawn Vaughn was on the Niners last week, to be honest with you. He got some run. They obviously picked up Izzy Abanikanda, who people really liked during the draft process. I was never really a big fan of, but I do think he fits the 49ers run game a lot better than he did the Jets. So I think there's a world where, they're down to their fourth guy. Maybe this does turn into more of a committee, but he does want to ride one running back in that backfield. And if Guerendo's out, then Taylor becomes, I'll throw him into like the 20 to 24 range as it relates to running backs this week. We have no teams on bye. There are no more byes left, obviously. So when we're talking about, where running backs fit in last week when we had 6 teams on bye, Taylor would be a more enticing play. But for right now, Taylor would be like a low-end RB2 for me if Guerendo does not go. If Guerendo plays, this ain't the running back ranking video, all right? We will be doing that tomorrow. But Taylor would be a top priority pickup this week, obviously, and I would spend, enough fab that you'll get him if you're a Guerendo owner or if you need a running back this week. So upwards of 10, 15, 20, but keep a very close eye on reports, obviously, as it relates to Guerendo. Isaiah Davis is, sparking a lot of interest now because Breece Hall was out, and then Davis and Braylon Allen split the work for the Jets last week. We don't know the severity of Breece Hall's injury. It's clearly a little bit worse than we had originally been reported to. He played through it the first week, and then he needed to sit down. I don't see a reason why they would push him. Obviously, if he plays, this whole backfield gets super messy, and honestly, I don't know if I want to play anyone. I'd probably still end up throwing Breece in my lineup if he's active, but when it comes down to the backups, if Breece does not play, they get a great matchup against Jacksonville. When we look at last week, everyone was excited about Braylon because the way he looked early on in the season. This split was dead down the center. Isaiah Davis and Braylon Allen last week. He got 10 carries. Braylon Allen had 11 carries. He caught 3 passes. Braylon Allen caught 4 passes. And when you looked at the more advanced numbers, like the 2-minute drills, the long down distance, the short down and distance snaps overall, routes run, they were a complete split. So at the very worst for Davis, it feels like this is a full running back by committee. And Davis was a dude who got a lot of hype in the preseason throughout camp. He came in and he was, said to be like a really good compliment to Braylon Allen because Allen's like this bigger dude who's like a bruiser and he could run in between the tackles, but Davis is a more versatile back. And you saw that in the passing game last week. He scored a touchdown, should have had 2 touchdowns probably. But Davis seems to be someone I'd probably prefer playing over Allen in PPR leagues. So Davis, I think, could be a decent flex start for you against Jacksonville this week if Breece Hall does not play. We have Tank. He had a really good game. Obviously, the game script favored Jacksonville here, or not even Jacksonville, but the game script favored a guy like Tank over ETN. ETN, obviously the pass catcher still. Tank ran really well, and that was what was happening in the beginning of the season. Tank's probably not really available in serious leagues, but he's got a good matchup. He'll be, a low-end RB2, decent flex play against the Jets if he is available in your league. Sean Tucker becomes interesting because Bucky Irving is now dealing with, this back injury and some, other ailments that have kind of come back and bit him in the ass a little bit these last couple weeks. He left the game. Rachaad White took over as the one. But one thing that we've clearly learned this season is that Tampa Bay wants to use a committee no matter who are the backs there. And sometimes it's a three-way committee between White and Bucky and Sean Tucker. So if Bucky misses this game, you would expect Sean Tucker to get some run here. He's not someone I feel comfortable throwing into my lineup. Like Rachaad White jumps up to a top 15, maybe even a top 12 option with Bucky off the ranking sheet here. Tucker, you could do worse in a flex pinch. He's gotten some goal line run. He can catch some passes. He's a pretty good runner overall. I'm not going like crazy to get him back in because it doesn't seem like Bucky's injury is anything overly concerning long term here. Sincere McCormick continues to run really well, but his ceiling is like super capped just because this offense does not score points. He doesn't catch a ton of passes here. I keep thinking Alexander Madison's going to come back. Like he should be back every week. He continues to be limited in practice and then gets ruled out. So it's possible they're just, giving these dudes the healthy scratch because you look at like just the pure yards per carry numbers for McCormick over a dude like Alexander Madison. I think it's like 5.5 down to 3.3. There's a very clear difference there. And Sincere has pretty much earned the starting job over these other guys again, but there's just not goal line opportunities. And if one of them, Zamir or Alexander Madison, comes back, then it becomes a really shitty committee in a shitty offense. And now Desmond Ridder is likely to be the starting quarterback for them this upcoming week, and that means an even shittier offense. Nothing else I'm really looking at down here that I am intrigued by. Charbonnet, obviously, he's 75% owned. He's not going to be available in any real leagues. If he is, you drop every single fab dollar you got on there. One other name I wanted to bring up that's not on this list, probably because he was pretty highly picked up last week, is Kamani Vidal. Didn't have a good game in the box score last week, but we did finally see that. This is what I was saying. Like, we're not going to want to start him, but what we want to see is the behind-the-scene numbers start to uptick for him a little bit. And he jumped up to 53% of the snaps last week. Gus Edwards still got the goal line carry. It didn't amount to like any stats really for Kamani Vidal, but in better matchups over these next 3 weeks, if Kamani's going to start to see 55, 60% of the snaps in that backfield, it's going to lead to some pass catching work. It's going to lead to some holes. It's going to lead to some production in fantasy. So Kamani Vidal absolutely needs to be owned. When we look at the other positions, there's not much to get overly excited about. It's the same guys that we've talked about week in and week out already. Adam Thielen had been our top pickup the last couple weeks, and he has come through. All these other guys, as you could see, like the roster percentage is so high right now that people aren't really, that they're not pick upable in most leagues. It's the same names. There's no big breakout guys. There's no guys that are widely available. Like the Elijah Moores would be top of the list if they're available. Devon Vele is, pretty good. He's shown some really good chemistry with Bo Nix, but again, he's not going to be anything more than pretty desperate flex play or like a wide receiver 4. Ray McLeod, he's been extremely inconsistent, but Atlanta throws the ball a decent amount, and Kyle Pitts is a fucking nothing burger week in and week out. So Ray's put up some good games. I would prefer a dude like Quentin Johnson over him. I'm not going to lie, especially in a matchup with Tampa Bay. And if Lad McConkey is not playing, I think Quentin Johnson becomes a pretty strong start there. Yeah, now outside of those guys, it's the same names kind of over and over again. It's the Xavier Legette's, it's those kind of guys. One other name we have to bring up is Jalen McMillan. So we got the rookie from Washington who kind of popped off for 2 touchdowns last week. He plays for Tampa Bay. Got a lot of hype in the preseason. I was someone that was kind of high on him. I wanted to see how he'd work into the wide receiver 3 role. And even with Godwin out, the dude has not been able to really do anything except for last week. He went 4 for 59. 2 touchdowns. That being said, those touchdowns could have just as easily went to Mike Evans, K-Dot, and either of the running backs, like Sterling Shepard, whatever. So if I'm looking at the day overall, touchdowns are very fluky. They happen, they don't happen, whatever. You can't really predict them. So if I look at his day as 4 for 59, running 73% of the routes, I'm not overly intrigued by that. I think he's fine to stash. I think he's fine to have on your bench. They have great matchups down the stretch, right? They play Carolina again. They have some matchups like that. So I don't hate the idea of stashing him and seeing if he starts to become a little bit more of a player down the stretch, but I'm not jumping at the bit to start a dude like McMillan just because of the 2 touchdowns last week. Yeah, and for the tight ends, it's kind of just like the same shit, different week every single time with these dudes. Like Daniel Bellinger, no, we're not investing in the Giants offense. Michael Mayer, no, he had 1 good game. It's Brock Bowers' world. Everyone else is just living in it. Hunter Henry's always a good stream. I'm surprised he's still sub 50% rostered. Zach Ertz is nearly 60% rostered, but he would be a top pickup if available. I think the only real ones to kind of shout out here are Stone Smart with Will Disley now out for a few weeks. I think Stone Smart makes a bunch of sense, especially if Will Disley is, or especially if Lad McConkey is out too. If both those guys are out, we've seen Herbert kind of always pepper his tight ends, no matter who was in the lineup for him. Like, he can make no-name tight ends become viable fantasy players for you. So Vlad's out, Will Disley's out. Stone Smart becomes someone that's like semi-intriguing just because he's right place, right time type of dude. You have Grant Calcaterra, who played pretty well for Philly, and he's put up like a really, really solid fantasy floor whenever Dallas Goedert has been out. It's not always resulted in a touchdown like it did last week, but for the most part, he's good for like, 3 catches, 45 yards, so which is honestly like better than the fucking wide receiver 2 in Philly half the time. But you could probably do worse than him. And then you have Juwan Johnson, if he's still available, right, with every single person pretty much dead in New Orleans. Now you have Derek Carr out, so like he's someone who took a nice jump up last week because Taysom Hill went out, and then with the quarterback situation, now I'm way less inclined to play him, but I still think he's a streamable option for you. We'll go down the trending down tab real quick, and then I'll jump into some defenses. Travis Homer, yes, you can drop him. Calvin Austin was always kind of a fluke pickup. George Pickens is going to be out for a few weeks, it does sound like, with the hamstring strain, and that opens up targets for other players. But this is a game, Pittsburgh-Philly, where I think both of them are just going to try to impose their wills and fucking carry the ball 70 times. So, good luck trying to choose which Pittsburgh receiver to put some money on there. So I'm out on Calvin Austin there. The running backs, Amir Abdullah, yeah, he's clearly been overshadowed by Sincere McCormick, Jonathan Brooks, rest in peace, Parker Washington. Listen, Parker had the one good game. There's no way that you were going to get consistency out of him, so definitely droppable. NWI would not drop just because Tennessee's schedule down the stretch gets so good. But again, that was the floor that you were going to see from NWI, right? If he doesn't score a touchdown, then you're getting the 2 for 15 game, which is what finally came after 8 weeks here. Cole Kmet, yeah, I mean, listen, I've kind of been on and off with the Bears offense, or I've been off them because they've been so on and off this year. I think Kmet's a fine streaming option, just like the other 15 dudes that are tight end 8 to 20 at this point. Chris Rodriguez, I think you can hold on to Chris Rodriguez. It's going to be Brian Robinson's backfield, but in game scripts, like against the Saints, they should be heavy favorites, and Rodriguez could get some real run here. Kareem Hunt, yeah, I think you can drop him if you need the spot. Dawson Knox, Kincaid should be back, so he is droppable. Devin Singletary, nothing more than a handcuff. MVS with the backup quarterback, not someone I feel like you need to waste a roster spot on. Braylon Allen, I would definitely hold on to. Madison, I think, is droppable. Lazard, droppable. Gus, you saw he's the goal line guy. So I think you can hold on to him, but again, I'm not going to kill you if you want to drop him. Pitts, I dropped him last week in my big league. Brandon Cooks. Yeah, Brandon Cooks is a pretty desperate flex play, but it's a good matchup against Carolina, so wouldn't fault you for holding on to him. Tolbert's been basically unusable week in and week out. He's had a couple good games, but never going to be able to predict when they come. Keon Coleman, I would not drop. Jaden, what the fuck is Jaden Reed doing on this list? People just like hate drop people. Khalil Herbert, definitely droppable. Taysom, obviously droppable. Hold on to Kamani Vidal. Good drop Tucker. Roshan, just, a handcuff hold, assuming he gets out of concussion. Ricky Pearsall, you could drop. Demarcus Robinson, I would probably hold on to. For defenses, how is Baltimore? I guess they're a shitty defense. Yeah, Baltimore is a phenomenal stream. They are like more than 2 touchdown favorites against the Giants this week, who are playing Drew Lock, and they're without like half of their fucking roster at this point. So Baltimore's a phenomenal stream. Washington also a phenomenal stream. I believe they are 7.5-point favorites right now against the backup quarterback in New Orleans. Arizona's a decent stream. I will say I like New England's offense a little bit, so I don't think it's as easy of a matchup, but they are a favorite and they are at home, which I love. The Falcons, if it's Desmond Ridder, yeah, they are streamable because everybody is streamable against Desmond Ridder, but the Falcons defense itself is fucking straight trash, so I'd rather not stream a team that's really, really bad. But you could definitely do worse given the matchup here. Detroit versus Buffalo, that's a hell no. New York at Jacksonville, I don't hate it if they get Sauce back, if they get some of their other defenders back that are a little bit banged up. The matchup is good. They're obviously playing in warm weather in Jacksonville. They're playing against Mac Jones, which is a nice little boost there. I don't think they're that heavy of favorites, maybe like 3-point favorites. Yeah, they're 3.5-point favorites. So, on the road, 3.5-point favorites. Nothing crazy, but I don't hate it. Indy at Denver is a horrendous stream. Denver versus Indy is a phenomenal stream against a turnover-prone QB in Anthony Richardson. They're 4-point favorites. At home is always a nice little something there. All right, so that was quick. Sorry for the lack of energy. A little bit of a lack of sleep this weekend. We had a very early flight. It is what it is. We are here for you regardless. I hope this was helpful. and go drop some fab on some running backs this weekend. All right. And I'll see you tomorrow for the running back preview, Thursday for the wide receiver preview. I'm out of here. Merch is live on the site, by the way, bdge.shop if you want to support. Smoochies.